Has AI lost its halo? Certification chaos and the trouble with biometrics. 3 intriguing topics we're going to be touching on Techstrong Gang coming up. Welcome back to Techstrong Gang. I'm Jon Swartz. I'm here in Seattle at the Lenovo Tech World Conference, just finishing it up. And joining me for our august panel in a very kind of mini but supersized panel are Guy Currier. Hey, Guy, how are you?
Great, John. Good to be here on a super panel.
There are strength in numbers. So whereabouts are you talking to us from?
I'm in San Jose, where I've been here all week for the Open Compute Project's Global Summit.
Okay, great. I was born and raised in San Jose. That's my hometown. So welcome to San Jose, which is, by the way, is larger than San Francisco. There are 1 million people in San Jose. And also, of course, my hero, our mentor, the man who just was promoted, Mitch. Mitch, welcome back. You are in San Francisco, I think.
I am in San Francisco. I take it I must need to check my email. Do you have some request, something you need me to write or something? Is that what all that was about, John?
Well, I know also you've got to get another title. Maybe you could just fill everybody in. I saw that on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's how we do all of our announcements, on LinkedIn, and then everybody internally can read it. No, I'm just kidding. Just recently moved into the role of VP and practice leader for our DevOps and application development. Paul Neshawati filled that role before. He's doing some other things now, and so they asked me to step in. I was working with Paul kind of in this space already, but just taking over as practice lead. So I'm excited, and it's extension, of course, the work that we've done at Techstrong and Techstrong Research. And, I love working with Guy and all the people we have at Futurum, yourself, of course, John. So just kind of more of the same, but even better. So I'm looking forward to it.
So without issuing a spoiler alert, I mean, I will say it. I think we're about to merge with the Futurum group. That's going to happen any day. So we're very excited. We're going to merge all of our resources. So we're going to have not just all these great research reports, we're going to have more stories tied together. I'm really excited about it. I actually saw Daniel Newman, who backstage interviewed Lisa Su and Pat Gelsinger here after their x86 consortium announcement. So he and the interesting Patrick Moorhead, who floats everywhere. He is kind of the analyst god in tech who is based in Austin. Ever present. That's the perfect word to describe him. He is everywhere and everything at every time. So let's start off with the first topic, which is basically, has AI lost its halo? And we had a column from Elliot Kolkenhoun, who said he is optimistic about the impact of AI, particularly in doing work that takes slow, low-level, mundane work off people's plates. And he's not only excited about that, but he also has some qualms. He wrote from San Francisco, where there's a lot of hand-wringing, as always, about technology. So we can't get enough of a good thing, but when we do, we start worrying about the repercussions and where it goes from there. And there are plenty of concerns, I would think, in terms of security, trust, misinformation, guardrails, sustainability. But let's start off with Guy. Guy, where do you take this in terms of AI and its upside versus the whispers of some of the downsizes?
Well, I think that it's really interesting to be at the Open Compute Project Global Summit this week because, like every conference and virtual, in-person, whatever, everywhere for the last year, it's all about AI. But the OCP tends to be, in my view, a bit of a bellwether for future trends because it's filled with practitioners, but especially vendors, and there's a lot of collaboration on where they see the future of any given trend, because they're trying to establish as quickly as possible standards to address that future. And OCP is pretty hardware oriented, infrastructure oriented. So was a whole lot of discussion around the need for high speed connectivity between accelerators and nodes and that sort of thing, because that's needed for AI training, and then also the need for a lot of memory that's very close to the processing, like all that kind of thing. But what's really interesting is so I think that there's sort of two trends going on. One is visible and one is less visible. And the one that's really visible is this idea of we need to understand AI better, how it works. One of my little hobby horses that, probably you guys have both been exposed to is that AI is actually three distinct things with three distinct life cycles, because there's training, there's tuning, and then there's RAG for inference. And what you're starting to see is this first trend, which is this sort of maturing of understanding. It doesn't have to be my hobby horse, just this idea that not everything needs to be a huge model, not every AI is generative AI, and so forth. One of the really interesting sessions that I attended talked about how smaller models can get the job done. And we've all known that, but that coming more into public consciousness, I don't think it will for a little while. But like I said, OCP tends to be this sort of bellwether for that sort of thing. So that's trend number one. Trend number two, which I think this column is sort of hinting at and is less visible, is when the other shoe drops in AI, which is, to my sense, and we've talked about that on this pod before, is when we start to actually run out of power in certain spots, when we start to run out of silicon. There'll be this sort of other reaction, which is AI doesn't do everything it's supposed to do all the time like it's been promised. At the same time as it's actually not available to me, or we are having trouble implementing it. And is that in 6 months? Is it in 18 months? We don't really know. But that, I think, is where we can remain optimists if we're thinking in the right time window. But we have to remain realists in the sense that there's a whole lot you can do right now, but it's not just like cloud and everything else before it. It's not everything that it's promised to be, not yet. And we're going to have stumbles. We're going to have security issues. We're going to have all these other sort of things. But what's really going to be the problem is when we can't advance because of the resource issue.
So that's going to something I wanted to expound upon something you said, Guy, in terms of like the timing, in terms of the expectations. And Mitch, it's interesting. We have this kind of impatience around something that we know will be incredibly significant. Who knows how long? And maybe you could touch on that, because I think that's also kind of goes to the core of what Elliot was writing about.
Well, I'm gonna draw an analogy. When I started my career, I worked in IT and banking, building banking software, and we had these giant rooms with check sorting machines that looked like a long conveyor belt that just had checks flying by. They would take buckets of checks, set them in there. They'd all get sorted into bins. They'd take each of those bins, combine those similar bins together, resort them. Eventually, you get the check going to the right place. What stayed here? What went to another bank? This is like when physical checks is what it took to deposit funds inside the bank. We go through this sorting out process. With technologies, we did it with cloud, right? Oh, everything's going to move to the cloud. We overpromise and deliver in the beginning. Oh, what about security? Oh, what about reliability? Oh, can we move everything? Oh, we way over rotate on what the expectations are. Some of it, all of it in good intentions for the most part. Sometimes it starts to get pulled back by a little bit of overhype, maybe a lot. And we're going through that sorting out process now with the next phase of AI moving, because of generative AI. So I think we're part of this sorting, and I like your framework that you laid out, Guy. I think that's very well informed and very, very disciplined CTO mindset. I appreciate the way you approached it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think another side of that coin, the way to look at it, at what's happening is also in parallel, is we're going through that hype cycle. And we've thought about AI, largely generative AI, as all the things it's going to do for us or to us as individuals in our lives and in our work. How's it going to improve my writing? How's it going to improve my calendaring? How's it going to improve my code? Whatever it might be. Or is it going to eliminate those things? Well, we start to see it's not eliminating everything. It's going to change in large part how we work. Now we're starting to see, okay, how is it going to be part of my work, not just eliminate my work? So you'll see a lot of people talking about agents. We're going to talk about BMC coming up here.
Yes.
I just got back from Atlassian. They were introducing their agents, which happens to be, their philosophy is there are human teammates and AI teammates. And then they're all teammates. They're people in the system. And AI gets assigned work. It's supervised by people. It's not agentic yet, the new phase, right? Not everything's going to be that way. Maybe not that way for a long time. So we're seeing where AI fits not into my own individual productivity, but also into workflows, into teamwork, and into operational aspects of our business. And a lot of it's being assigned, let's say the toil work. Okay, let's automate things we don't want to repetitively do.
Right.
Why do we pay our well-talented operations or security or development or testing people to do those repetitive tasks? Let's have them do higher order functions. Or it can also be used as no one can consume all that information, but let's go apply some guidelines. We have brand guidelines. Let's go look at all of our marketing content or all of our published content. Are we following those brand guidelines? No wrist slapping, no changing automatically, but now we know what to go, okay, got some adjusting to do to kind of bring it back in. You can imagine for compliance, for security, lots of different applications. So, I think it's very natural for the Valley to be in freak out mode because I haven't lived in the Valley, but certainly experienced enough cycles of boom to job loss to boom to job loss, and everybody wonders what it's going to happen to them. Is not just jobs change, but companies come and go, and that's part of that freak out mode I think we're seeing. So very long answer, not as well disciplined as guys, but there's some thoughts about what we're going.
So Mitch, here's the thing. So what do we want our audience to know and do, right? The hype cycle, the valley of despair, or whatever it's called, like all those sort of things, right? Remember, you have goals and needs in your business and in your technology use. And I like to say, you both may disagree, that the productivity aspect of AI, which gets all the focus, and that's it's going to take my jobs, or I can fire a bunch of people, or like whatever it is, I think that's truly secondary or third in line to the two great benefits of AI, which are reliability and quality. Frankly, reliability and quality. Let's remember that, as I like to say, there's no such thing as an AI application. There are AI services that change, automate, inform, assist applications. So what you're trying to do is give the workers the ability to reliably produce. That is a productivity gain because AI assists them. AI proposes. AI gets them away from procrastination, from being stuck, or any of that sort of thing. All of us are saying all the time, don't leave AI alone. There needs to be a human to review it. So now you have a human who is more reliable thanks to AI and who can get more cycles of review or start from a further starting point thanks to AI, and that's what improves quality. And you can do that, whatever the troughs and valleys and all that, whatever tools you have available to you. It might not be the best model, the latest service, or any of that sort of thing. You can continue to pursue those goals through any peaks, valleys, shoes dropping, any of that other sort of stuff that might be going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a parallel between Silicon Valley and Hollywood in a certain sense that we like these storylines and we follow them, maybe even a more enhanced steroid-induced cycle than Hollywood, where we go rags to riches to rags, back to riches. So there's this kind of trough. I think Elliott refers to trough of disillusionment. But I wanted to go back just briefly to something Mitch mentioned out of BMC, which Mike Gazzard wrote about. They previewed at their show in Las Vegas a pair of tools that should make it simpler to ensure high-quality data is only used to train AI models. Maybe that assures us in a certain sense. Maybe each of you or one of you could kind of address what BMC is doing and how that might play into this whole story.
I think, and you mentioned RAG Guy, one of the ways to introduce your own data into generative AI without having to train the model, but then there's also training the model. The challenge with these very large language models is the vast information that's being consumed or built into the training process of those, which takes a lot of this power that we're requiring in our infrastructure. Not all things are equal. Some of it is good quality, high quality information. Some of it is just out there in junk. And, we as humans are not in the process of sorting that out. We're relying on AI to do that and improving the algorithms and things to do that. But in an organization, you can't afford that. You're not going to have, the Bank of America building the next most massive large language model, at least not anytime soon, that will overcome anything that NVIDIA and OpenAI are doing, right? They want models, whether they're machine learning and AI models or they're large language, small language models, whatever they might be, to be well-tuned to specific needs, not just general purpose models. So you have two different ends of the spectrum, right? I'm going to use this for writing because it's got, massive quantities, to I want something that's really tailored to writing highly technical engineering documents for building designs, right? Where do I get that? Because I can't have this other stuff seeping in, right? And so that's part of this winnowing down, that sorting machine, sending the right checks to the right location. That's that process we're going through is, okay, how are we going to be creating those things? And the tools that companies like BMC are coming out with are things that aid organizations in doing that. So they know what things to build into the model, what do we really need to train, what things can we put in front of through a RAG process that might be accelerated through a vector database, but might come from file servers and data storage devices and document systems or whatever search algorithms that might actually feed into that. So again, I think this is that maturation process of learning, to Guy's point, how we use AI and how to get the outcome we want out of it, not just the next coolest thing that the folks at Techstrong will write about. We write about that. But what's not going to just grab it in a headline, but what's really going to make my operations more efficient, help people get more done, take away the toil, and work on the things that actually make a difference to continuity, customer value, business value, things like that.
That's good. Hey, Guy, we only have about 30 seconds. Do you want to add anything? If not, we can move on to the next segment, but I want to give you the final words.
Well, thank you. I think that we would all agree.
30 seconds, remember.
I think we'd all agree that AI is the greatest technology wave that we have ever seen. And it reminds me most of the PC revolution in the 80s and 90s. I've mentioned that here before, where there was intense investment for decades with no perceived economic impact on productivity at all because the benefits were so obvious. And I think that it will be a shorter cycle here, but it's the same thing. So full speed ahead. And I think we're learning quickly also, and that's encouraging.
Speaking of full speed ahead, we're going to go to the next segment, which has something to do with a truncated type of schedule in terms of certifications. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll be right back.
Cloud Native Now is the web's leading resource for the growing cloud native ecosystem. CloudNativeNow.com is your destination for news, thought leadership, features, and webinars on cloud native architecture, Kubernetes, serverless, cloud native application development, microservices, service mesh, cloud native security, and more. Stay on the cutting edge of modern application development at Cloud Native Now.
All right, we've rounded turn 2 here, and Jon has ceremoniously handed off the baton to me, so I'm taking the lead. We're going to be talking about certificates, actually. Apple and Google, many folks have talked about the lifespan of digital certificates that we use in our systems, our servers, our applications that are in our browsers, that are in our phone. They are essential to how we do both encryption between devices, applications, software, et cetera, but also identity of and authenticity of and trust of devices and software as well. And we've been in a world where certificates might last 20 years. They might last 5 years. I'm issued issued a lot of certificates in my past lives and in the certificate authority business, and also consume those certificates, putting them in servers and devices and things like that. But that window of trust, I think we're realizing, because the pace of innovation happens, software change happens so quickly and so rapidly, what might be trusted today may not be as trustworthy, or at least question the trustworthiness of it tomorrow. I'm here at Security Field Day this week in San Francisco, not just enjoying the sunny weather here, but we actually had a presentation yesterday from DigiCert talking about their business, who I've worked with in the past as a partner. And there's a great article up on Security Boulevard talking about Apple wanting to shorten the time span, the lifetime of a digital certificate. Now, digital certificates kind of come and go. They live until a date, and then they're gone according to the date in that certificate. What's different here is Apple wants to shorten that because, again, of the issues that I mentioned around how long can we trust that certificate. But also not just relying on the date inside the certificate, but applying their own time frame. After a certain time frame, even if it's issued for 3 years, after 45 days, we'll decide not to honor that anymore, which is a bit of an oxymoron, because now we, as if it's an end user or a digital certificate on our phone and we have to get something renewed, what is that? I don't know how to use the cert manager. Hey, what do I need to do? Or it's developers providing updated code with digital signing of the code certificates. The changes to that. So we're in this new kind of window of, well, maybe we don't follow the certificate anymore. We apply our own policies to it, which could improve security. And it could also open up a Pandora's box of, well, Guy trusts them for 90 days, but I only trust him for 45. And John trusts the data in the certificate. Who's right? And how do we, as the consumer of software, hardware, and services, not get screwed in the end, because now all of a sudden things are unreliable and stop working without us realizing it?
We're talking about
going back,
Mitch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, John.
You go ahead. Go ahead, Guy. No, you go ahead.
So, Mitch, we're talking about the way this works, because it's not really an area I go deep on. The way this works is the certificate allows for a secure, meaning an encrypted connection between the user agent, which is usually a browser, but it can be a mobile app, it can be a lot of things, between the user agent and the server. And that means that I know that the communications are essentially private between me as the user using the user agent and the company running the server. So I'm just wondering, why did we ever want to put that in the hands of the company to begin with? We don't see, it's not, so when the cert gets set, the validating authority, first of all, it's a centralized or central validating authority. There are a lot of them, but most of them are private companies, so I'm trusting that. I'm trusting that the user agent or the browser or Apple or whoever trusts that company. That's okay, I can see that. But then the company itself, like you say, they could set it for 20 years, they could set it for whatever. I have no idea what they're setting it for as the user. Why did I ever want that to begin with? Well, why didn't I want to do it myself or go and say, I don't trust any cert ever forever, so I'll do it per session, and after that it expires?
I guess the analogy I'd make is, if you thought managing passwords was a pain in the butt, can you imagine managing what certificate? I mean, there are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of certificates in a device. Everything from hardware, subsystems, modules to individual applications and what they use for, SSL, TTLS, encrypted communications. Without getting too way into digital cryptography, there are issuing organizations that we put our trust in. Google is one, DigiCert's another, Entrust, a whole number of them, and including some kind of open public things that are available to issue certificates. And they serve many different purposes. If I'm buying a computer and it has digital certs in it to say that the BIOS is valid and it's not come from a corrupted source, or my application software from Microsoft is valid and it came from a trusted source, we don't, as end users, don't want to have to worry about that stuff. That should be them. And Microsoft gets to set their policies around how long that certificate is valid, because guess what? They're the ones that have to reissue it and distribute it when it goes out of date. So I know this from working in the Wi-Fi and the cable modem and set-top industry. And what's interesting is even when you set them for a long time, oftentimes those devices live much, much longer than intended. We've had to reissue new certificate to the devices that are 10, 15, 20 years old that we thought would not be in use anymore, but they still are. So here, I think what I don't really get yet is what the true motivation is behind why an Apple would say, we're going to limit website certificate validity to just 45 days, even if the certificate says something else. On the one hand, the principle of shortening the lifespan, and by the way, some certificates can have a lifetime of seconds or minutes. They don't have to last a long time, because that one communication, I want to be able to set the trust of it for a very short window. But the purpose of doing that tells me there is something they are seeing in websites. And I think it's to thwart those who have acquired them nefariously, and they are bad actors that are setting up websites to do not just spam, but spoofing, phishing, things like that. So it's easier to say, I don't care what the certificate is, that we're not going to honor. And I think that's probably the motivation, but we'll have to explore this some more.
Yeah.
Long answer.
That's it.
To your question. I apologize.
Yeah, you know what? Well, I was going to say that you answered the question I was going to ask you, Mitch. It's like, it seems as if these cert lifespans are absurdly short now. Or the bar is being lowered, or not lowered, but truncated. I think, was it Google's 90 days, Apple's 45 days,
right.
Which in a sense, I guess it's in the name of internet security, but it shifts the burden squarely to the shoulders of the system's administrators. And I'm wondering, is what's going on, is that a reflection of a larger reflection of this ramped up or amped up tech development cycle during this age of AI? I mean, is that somehow related? I just don't know.
I think
so boo-hoo. I really don't like, for 90 days, 45 days. I get it. It's a headache, but these are not scenarios like credit cards where Congress passed a law 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was, holding the credit card companies liable in the case of fraud or a hack or whatever. Like, that if you lose your credit card, you literally lose it, or you pull it out of your wallet and toss it into a room and say, have at it, people, right? That you're liable for whatever it is, $250, and the credit card company has to handle the rest. That puts the burden on them to ensure security. And that's how it ought to be. And I think 1 second or 1 minute or maybe 5 minutes, that sounds about right to me in terms of how much trust I have in this whole complicated system of ensuring, encrypted, secure communications. And we're talking about a system problem that may be hard, but could be really helpful to solve. And I have to think, Mitch, I think about zero trust scenarios, and zero trust it has a lot of appeal in the sense of, why should I even trust this sort of, this TLS or this SSL necessarily, when the system at the other end could certainly be compromised and I have no way of knowing, and I might wind up paying as a result. So I might as well have user agents or devices or what have you that assume that this certified, connection is not actually, without risk.
Well, they're and I neglected to mention, they are working through organizations like the Certificate Authority Browser Forum, which is who set these standards for the browsers. Here's what I think it really is going on. The punchline here is, we're moving from a very manual world of issuing certificates. By the way, can you imagine in today's world, there are revocation lists these are no longer valid, even though they say they are. We're not going to honor these certificates. Can you imagine, how many certificates have been warranted to be not trustworthy? So what we're moving to is this world of issue it, eventually gets renewed or might be revoked. It all needs to be managed. It needs to be in a certificate management system that's automated. And it doesn't matter if I change them every second or every 5 minutes or every 5 weeks or 5 years. The reissuance and the revocation of an invalid certificate and the application putting the certificate where it needs to be in our device, in our software, in our servers, wherever it might be, that's all automatic. So it doesn't matter how long it issues for. If I want to make it for 10 minutes today because I'm Apple and I've got this whim, great. Everything updates. Now there's a cost to updating certificates. They aren't big heavyweight things, but I just we don't want to be in this sort of manual back to the sorter machine that I used to previously in that example. It needs to be all digital, automated, no manual process involved, and an easy to operate system. So imagine how often our AI systems are updated, right? With new data through RAG, new training in AI, generative AI, new AI models for machine learning. That cycle's going to shorten and shorten and shorten and shorten. And same issue. What's trustworthy? Is this model a trustworthy one versus the one I saw 5 minutes ago? Yes, I know it is, because who said they issued it and says it is trustworthy is by that certificate, but nobody had to get involved, because when it was deployed, that certificate was created through an automated process that we trust. That's what we're moving to.
Well, our cert is almost expired for this segment, so I think we'll leave it at that, and we will. I know. And I think we're going to make a shift and talk about something that I remember writing about forever long ago, biometrics, and kind of a new twist on the whole topic when we come back in just a moment.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
We're back at Techstrong Gang, and we're going to talk about biometrics, which is something I remember writing about decades ago, which is dating me in this industry, but in any event. So as AI technology advances, we're seeing more sophisticated and secure biometric authentication solutions that are emerging. And the reason why is we need to pave the way for a future of frictionless and trustworthy digital transactions. I think maybe some of the emerging biometric modalities will be iris recognition and gait analysis. And I think with the kind of the addition of AI is going to create a lot of potentially interesting models. I leave it up to both of you all to tell me what is the difference, or going to be the difference, between biometric authentication, which I remember back in the day is scanning like fingerprints or pattern passwords or facial recognition or eye scanning. How is this going to move on to this next era?
Well, I'll jump in and say, think of the transition from physical attributes of us that we might scan and do facial recognition and fingerprints and things like that, to, and I don't remember if the article that we put up references this or not, but think almost of it as a digital twin of here's us and our behaviors, right? Here's what we do online. Here's our digital behaviors online. Here's our everything from, when I go and order Mexican food, I usually get a burrito, but Mitch suddenly is ordering something different. Why is that? Something very different. Yeah, I'm just picking a ridiculous example here, but think of where this is heading is creating essentially a behavioral model, digital twin of us and our behaviors, and using AI to identify both the factors that will help, not just one, but many, potentially thousands, that help identify behaviors about us that would indicate something out of the ordinary, that might indicate that there's fraud or that the identity of who is doing this is not the same identity. And that's where you couldn't do this any other way without AI, because the amount of data and number of points to assess and analyze the models it would take to determine this really do require an AI. So I think the identity, the fraud, the finance, economics of this are driving us to think about how do we take AI and biometrics to the next level and think about our digital biometrics, if we want to think of it that way, to help identify fraud and errant behavior that might lead to helping us from not getting our data stolen or fraudulent transactions happening.
That's wonderful. I think actually, Mitch, the burrito ordering analogy it's not actually an analogy. I think it's perfect. Because I think that the driving force behind biometrics is not security, it's convenience. It's simple and easy. I'm just, like the TSA lines, I'm based out of Austin, Texas, so I don't know how widespread this is. I've seen it in a lot of places, but they do a little facial recognition now instead of a physical ID. And I'm just kind of wandering by, and it's already taken my picture and identified me. And the burrito ordering analogy, I mean, I completely agree about your digital sort of persona, if you like, behavior, your IP address, or your relay, or there's all kinds of, let's say, metadata about you as you are using the internet in various ways that can help identify you and make things much more convenient for you. It's just like the going to your favorite store. They know you. They know, or your favorite restaurant. They already know what your order is, and when you do something different, they're like, oh, but they recognize you. They may not even know your name, but they recognize you. This also points to the problem with it because I don't know if you have ever experienced AI making a mistake before, but I have. In fact, Mitch, you probably did that earlier today. So in the end, right now, it's humans training and building these systems to do this sort of thing. And it may be more accurate, but it may be less accurate than a human would. Maybe it'll kind of be more accurate than a human, but it can't by its nature be infallible. And so we start putting more trust in something that doesn't deserve that level of trust. And that's what concerns me.
And it can't be unilateral. I mean, think of a no-fly list. I'm talking about AI. Well, maybe it's AI contributed now too, but you don't want to be on the no-fly list of fraudulent transactions. So now you can't get yourself off. What happens when there is a mistake, inaccurate? And there's also, other factors to consider, like data poisoning. Once data gets into an AI system that is fallible, inaccurate, maybe even just an inaccurate algorithm calculated your property taxes, and now suddenly it looks like you own something you don't own. That data can get into models and live on forever and poison follow-on, inferences and analysis that are performed. So this is, I think, is one of those. I like your TSA analogy too, by the way, because we have that in Denver and several other cities. In Denver, so it takes a picture of you. There's also a person standing there next to it talking to the TSA agent, at least the clear person anyway, has a picture of you and looks at you and the picture, and the TSA looks at your information. So there's a human in the loop there too, is what I'm trying to point out. So it's an inevitable idea, I think, of how AI applies too.
Because of the convenience. So that's the tension.
Yeah.
That's the tension here. It's similar to what we did with cloud, which was that, led by Amazon, but all the major cloud vendors were saying, it's pay per use. It's very efficient. You're going to save money. And the opposite turned out to be true, because the reason people were doing it was actually to cut out, ticketing and having to run infrastructure themselves, and all these other things were driving them there, despite the headline benefit. And in the same way, we have this tension. The headline benefit is, it's more secure because you can't really fake your fingerprint. Well, I mean, now we know you can, but yeah, exactly. So there's this tension between what's driving it, which is the convenience for the user, and the supposed headline, benefit of greater security. And when you add AI into the mix on both sides, I don't know, Jon, what's the truth anymore at this point? Seriously.
I've been trying to figure that out, especially in this era, day to day, hour to hour. And it's interesting, Guy, you mentioned convenience. And I think whenever I think of convenience, I think of commerce. And in a sense, we've talked about and we've written about AI's impact on the holiday shopping season. And I guess what it all comes down to, if the customer feels more secure and there are user-friendly ways to perform a digital payment, they're going to adapt to this and they are going to follow. I mean, I remember the day when we were reluctant to buy something online, and now it's second nature. I buy everything online, and online knows everything that I want. And that kind of mirrors the way I buy coffee, for instance. I go to the same place every day because they know who I am. As soon as they see me, they start making the drink before I even get to the front. So they're assuming, and they're assuming correctly, what I want, what I need. And I feel very secure in that scenario. So again, it's always, with tech, the whole tech industry, it's always been about convenience and ratcheting up sales in a sense for consumers. Enterprise may be a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's fascinating what this story's getting to the core at, and what biometrics might mean, especially in the next couple of years.
I think we're seeing a sea change in the process here, because think about two-factor. How many people think two-factor is a pain in the ass, whether it's a text I have to type in the code for, or an authenticator app that I've got to get out? I think what the sea change that's happening here is we're now designing, because we have more capabilities, we're now designing convenience in, instead of testing where the limits of, I have to take my shoes, my belt, and and I got to get out my credit card and my passport and my driver's license ID just to get through security. Now I can walk through. I mean, I've literally walked all the way through, other than a biometric on my eye, which kicked off in addition to getting photo taken that I didn't stop for. I walked all the way through TSA without stopping, other than to get my bags off the belt. That's what we're seeing here, is, to Guy's point about convenience, it's all about convenience, and how much inconvenience the consumer, the end user, the individual will see as unacceptable or not acceptable at all. And now we're designing systems saying we can do a lot more security. At the time, it's kind of almost like Total Recall, walking through the scanner on Mars, right? And this person gets through, this person's carrying guns or whatever. It's that same.
I think of Minority. Sorry to interrupt. I think of Minority Report, and basically, ads are being projected to you as you walk by the certain stores that you might be interested in. And in a sense, it goes back to something a couple of years ago. I remember interviewing Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta, and he talked about their long-term plan is to make it as easy as possible for you to get through security, get to your gate, find out all the information you need to know about your flight, the status of it, what your needs are, by just kind of glancing at a very personalized messaging board in the future that's directed to you.
Well, think about, you can go to an Amazon store in the Las Vegas terminal, walk in, there's no people in it, pick up what you want and walk out. It's all going off of information that's on your phone in your Amazon account. Imagine getting on a plane. Why do we scan our phones or scan the QR code or the barcode on our ticket? This stupid paper ticket. Even the thing we have in our wallet on our phone. There'll be a day when we walk on the plane without ever getting any of that out. It'll know who we are. It'll know we have a valid ticket to get on. And it will know who we are because it has other identity information about us in our phone or biometrics scanning, et cetera. So that's where this is going, where we don't have to take an action for many of those things to validate the security or identity of who we are.
So we're going to leave it, Guy. You're going to get the last word, because I think we're kind of coming up against it right now.
I think that you both mentioned commerce. I called retail retail essentially, I guess, includes food, restaurants, ordering, that sort of thing, is the killer app for generative AI, so to speak, because this kind of, I talk about reliability and quality being the real benefits of adding AI and AI automation. And it's the same sort of thing, which is that your shopping experience is so much improved simply by decent suggestions. We've been dealing with really crappy suggestions for many years because they are not using AI or generative AI, and your past history and all this nice tuning and RAG and all this sort of stuff that we're starting to see come online. So that, Mitch, it's going to know that burrito order that you typically do, but it's not going to force it on you. And it's not going to show you some weirdly sorted example of 3 recent burrito orders you made. It's going to say, here are you, it's somehow going to put somehow. I mean, there's a method behind it that puts together everything and says, well, when Mitch comes in on a Thursday at this time, or enters the site on Thursday at this time, this is more likely. It's the same sort of thing, and you just extend that to everything else. When it comes to biometrics or these digital imprints or any of that sort of thing, we're talking about this funny confluence of that kind of prediction with security. And that's where we sort of head off into this unknown of, is that kind of, because like you said, Mitch, there's human intervention all along right now with the current systems. At some point, there's not going to be human intervention, and it's going to be Minority Report again. And black-clad people are going to fall out of the sky and grab us and put us on a watch list, metaphorically speaking. So we'll just wait for that.
Wow, that's going to be a bad flashback to something.
Not the ones you
Exactly.
Wow. On that imagery, let's end this segment and the show. We want to wish everybody a great weekend. And Monday's episode, I think Alan Schimmel and Mike Bizard will be back. I think Mike is still celebrating probably the imminent return to the World Series of the New York Yankees. So I'm sure that will be top of mind for him.
Well, hey, I also want to thank our sponsors, every burrito restaurant across the globe. Asked us to talk about, I'm hungry for burritos now, so let's go.
Damn, now, I can't get out of my mind now. Damn. In any event, we have a lot of programming coming up later on Techstrong TV. Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Mitch. You guys are awesome.
Pleasure.
Great flow of conversation between the two of you. It makes it so easy to host this. So again, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you down the road.